I'm going to take us off to Facebook, and then we'll tell everybody who we are and what's going on here tonight. It takes just a minute for me to get Facebook up, so bear with me. I'm doing a lot of the technology tonight, so stay with me for 1 minute. So thank you everybody for your little bit of patience here while I get this going. RL, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. And one more quick second. Facebook takes a little bit, so I appreciate everybody and their patience that's in the room with us. Can you guys hear me still okay? Amanda, give me a nod if you can hear me. Okay. Okay, there we are. So let me do one other thing. All right. Okay. All right, everybody. Hello, I'm Julie with Warwicks, and we are here with RL Maizes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And we are going to talk to you tonight about other people's pets. Oh my goodness, it was such a great book. I loved this book. It was so fun. Anyways, let me tell you a little bit about Warwicks and what's going to happen tonight. Warwicks is located in San Diego in La Jolla, California. We are open for business, and we are doing social distancing, masks. You can come in and browse. I always like to say any way that there is to get a book, you can get it at Warwicks. So you can order it online. You can call us. You can come to the store. We'll ship it to you. If you live in La Jolla, we'll drive it to your house. So that's one of those things where if you'd like, we can get you it any way that you can get a book, you can get it from Warwicks. So tonight there's a couple ways to participate. We're actually flashed out to Facebook Live as well tonight. So if you have a question, you can either put it in the chat room here in Zoom, or you can actually ask a question in the Facebook room as well. So Amanda's in the background monitoring that. And so Amanda, if you want to come in with the Facebook questions, if there are any, just give me a heads up on that. So I think that's it for who Warwicks is. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who R.L. Maizes is. She was born and raised in Queens, New York. She now lives in Boulder County, Colorado. Maizes' stories have aired on National Public Radio and have appeared in the literary magazines Electric Literature, Witness, Bellevue Literary Review, Slice, and Blackbird, among other publications. Her essays have been published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, PsychologyToday.com, Lilith, and elsewhere. Maizes is an alumna of the Breadloaf Writers Conference, I always say this wrong, Sewanee,
that's perfect.
Okay, God, I always get that wrong. Sewanee's Writers Conference and the Tin House Summer Writers Workshop. We just had Jamie Poisson. I don't know if you know him. He wrote Like Life, but he went there too, and I was just like, I stumbled over it at his too. Her work has been nominated for Pushcart Prize. She's the author of the short story collection We Love Anderson Cooper, and we're here tonight to talk about other people's pets. So to start us off with our first question, which is the standard question, but it's one that we've got to ask because there's some people out there that just don't know. So tell us a little bit about the book.
So the book is about an animal empath who was raised to be a burglar. But when the book opens, she's an adult and she has left her life of crime behind her. She's a fourth-year veterinary student, and she's engaged to a man named Clem, and her life seems to be going along pretty well. But then her father gets arrested, and in order to raise his bail, she returns to robbing houses, taking care of animals in the home she robs.
And there's so many things to dissect in that. And the book's been out a little bit, and you have to tell me if I'm going to be doing any spoilers or anything. So the two main characters that really, it's really Lala and Zeb's story, right?
Yes.
And so, I mean, and a lot of it centers around why they do this, and you know, Zeb was a robber before, you know, before it you know, brought Lala into it, but a lot of it has to center around the abandonment issue, don't you think?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the emotional energy of the book comes from the fact that Alyssa, who's Lala's mother and Zeb's wife, abandons the family when Lala is 8. And so then Zev, who's a thief, is left to be a single dad and to kind of do the best he can at it, which isn't that good all the time. And so he does end up bringing her in to the family business and, you know, teaching her the tricks of the trade.
And remind me, does he bring her in before or after Alyssa abandons him? I can't remember that part.
He brings her in after.
After, yeah.
So right. So I agree with you that definitely the abandonment changes the dynamic of the family.
Right. And it just is one of those where it's just like, I mean, that is so much in part of, and I forgot to do something and I'm going to do it now because it really speaks to the kind of writing that this is. And I do equate you with Kevin Wilson because your writing and his writing are so similar. So if anybody out there has read Nothing to See Here, it's fantastic as well. And Kevin gave this such an amazing blurb. I loved what he said about it. While reading R.L. Maizes' Other People's Pets, I could not stop saying, quote, remarkable. Every time the novel opened up yet again to reveal some new depth, I worried, how could it hold such wonder without bursting? But Maizes possesses such magic. This examination of family across all lines and definitions will open you up in such necessary, beautiful ways. I mean, I couldn't say it better. And it's so true because you have robbers and you have animals and you have these things going on. And it is amazing that you were able to pull it all together with still such humor and quirk to it. Was that an intention? I mean, was it intentionally done that way? Because it could be really deep. I mean, these topics could be really, you know, but they're just done at a level that's just so accessible and I don't know, fun. So was that your writings?
So yeah, I always try to put humor in the writing. I mean, I love to read funny books, and I love to write humor. You know, and I think, you know, obviously, if you read this book, just so I don't want to mislead anyone, there's some very sad parts to this book, but I always like to balance that sadness with something a little lighter and something a little funnier. I think it's easier for the reader. It gives the reader a break. It's another level on which they can enjoy the book. So yeah, definitely, you know, intentional, although, you know, you always hope it works. So if you found it that way, I'm really glad.
Yes, no, definitely. Because it is one of those things where there are some just heart-wrenching moments, but then there are some things that there's times when you just like laugh out loud, just go, oh, that was a brilliant line. That was a great line.
Much.
So part of it is, you know, so because making a thief and a robber, being sympathetic with that had to have been tricky.
Yeah. When I decided that both the father and the daughter were going to be burglars, I knew that was going to be one of the big challenges of the book, was going to be to make them sympathetic. And it's not that every book, the main character has to be sympathetic.
No.
I don't think that's true, but I really wanted them to be sympathetic. That was my vision for the book. And so with Lala, you know, it was a little bit easier. First of all, you know, she's the child in the situation. She's been abandoned by her mom. That makes her sympathetic. And then she's an animal empath, and everybody loves animals, you know, and she's taking care of these animals. So, you know, I with her, I felt like it was going to be, you know, I could make her sympathetic. The father, Zeb, was a little harder because, well, so he's raising her to be a burglar, which in some ways is even worse than being a burglar yourself. And then, you know, he's not an animal empath, so he doesn't have that to give him, you know, to make him a sympathetic character. So I did put some backstory in the book. That was one of the things I do that explains why he became a burglar. and hopefully that will make him a little bit more sympathetic. And also, there's the relationship between them. I mean, I think that's probably the main thing that makes the characters sympathetic. They clearly love each other and want the best for each other. And I hope, I try to have that come across almost on every page. I mean, that's what the relationship and that was, to me, was one of the hearts of the book.
Yeah, definitely. Because it was just, you could see that he was just trying his best, but his best just sometimes, you know, as with all of us, I mean, come on, you know? I mean, as a parent, as a spouse, as anything, I mean, we're all doing the best we can, but sometimes, and sometimes back to the robbery, to doing the robbery, and Lala, I found this sometimes with her, is that, not that it was a form of addiction, but it was sort of, I mean, it was sort of this place that she went to sometimes as, you know, a relief, or she was seeking something in it, and it probably because of the way she was raised, you know.
Yes, I intended that, and I think that's right. I think it's kind of a compulsion for her.
Yeah.
So even though she has some good motivations, maybe to raise money for her father's bail, take care of some animals, she also has some motivations that are very mixed, and it is a compulsion. And when her life, you know, isn't necessarily going the way she wants it to go, that's something she looks toward to maybe balance things out. You know, there's a kind of neediness that she has, that she tries to she tries to meet some of that neediness in these other people's homes.
And so when you were writing it, like, okay, let's go back a little bit to the idea and the writing process, because there is so much to that. What was the elevator pitch that you told yourself about when you started this book?
So, you know, I really fly by the seat of my pants when it comes to writing. You know, the first draft, I have no idea what's going to happen. The first draft is me telling myself a story. And so I did know there was going to be, I knew there was going to be a criminal. And then, you know, so I knew there was going to be a criminal. I'm not even sure if I knew it was going to be Zev at that point. No, I did. I take that back. I knew there was going to be a father criminal. And then I just started writing. At first, I think when I was writing, you know, she loved animals, but then at some point as I'm writing about her, I realized she can feel what the animals feel physically and emotionally. And I have to tell you, that was like such a happy moment for me, because first of all, I love magical realism. And I just thought about following her around for 300 pages and seeing the world through her eyes as someone who can feel what animals feel. And I just thought it was going to be such a kick. I mean, I thought it was going to be such a fun book to write, which it was. I mean, it was hard too, but
right.
That element of it was really, you know, it tested my imagination, and I just loved it.
Yeah, it was fantastic, because it really is that when she could take care of those animals and know, because that's the thing that we always are with animals. I mean, if you're an animal lover, it's like you just wish that you knew, oh, what's wrong with you? I wish you could talk to me. And that is one of those, that would definitely, it was wonderful part of it. But it wasn't so, you know, because sometimes that can be, it was just done so well, because you could really believe that she, you know, it was just done fantastic. So for everybody out there, they need to read this, because it was just done so wonderfully. So when you were writing it with that, and that was your idea, was there anything that came up that was just like this aha, like I figured out, or, you know, an aha moment in the book that when you were writing it?
Well, okay, so that she's an animal empath was an aha moment.
Okay.
And then I think when and I don't think this will be too much of a spoiler, but Zev, well, first when he brings her in to his profession, so that's an aha moment. Not only do we have a burglar as a protagonist, but he's teaching his daughter, so that was a huge aha moment. But then, you know, there's a whole thing where he homeschools her, and when I realized he was going to homeschool her, and the impact on her that was going to have, that was really an aha moment too. You know, yeah. Just kind of, you know, what a complex character he was to make that decision, and the consequences for her as a right. child and as an adult.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's the thing, is like you make that decision as a when they're young and not really maybe seeing the trajectory of what that will do to their lives when they're teenagers and when they're, the things that they go through and that. Yeah, that had to have been one, because if she was in school, it would have taken a whole different kind of trajectory too in the
Yes.
book. Yeah, for sure. No, so well. I mean, I can't. It's so wonderful. So a little bit more about you. So, and you talk about how you like writing humor and everything, but you also wrote a great little love story for Modern Love. How was that? Yeah. How was that? And how did that story come about? And maybe people don't know what that story is.
So that's the story of how my husband and I met. And not really how we met, but how I fell in love with him, because we were on like our third date, and I at the time had 2 dogs and he had 1 dog, and we took the dogs on a hike. As you said, I live in Boulder, Colorado, so we took them on a hike, and it was in October. And so I just thought, which was terrible, I should have brought water for the dogs, but I just thought it was going to be cool. It's Colorado. I thought it was going to be cool enough that it wasn't a super long walk. But it turned out to be very hot. And so the dogs were a little hot. And, 3/4 of the way through that hike, he got down on one knee. Now, of course, I'm a little crazy anyway, but like, here's this man I've been dating. This is my 3rd date. He's getting down on one knee. And I'm like, I don't really think that that's what he's doing. I don't really, but like part of me was like, what is he doing? and what he was actually doing was he was pouring water into his palm and giving, in order to feed all the dogs, but and especially mine too, to give them water to make sure they were okay. And I love that he did it. And I love that he didn't ask me. Like, here were these animals and they needed something and he was going to give it to them. And why bother asking? He was just going to do it. They were thirsty. And I totally fell for him in that moment.
I love that. And that's one of those things too, though, but some people get kind of funky when you do stuff with their animals. You know what I mean? It's like, don't be, don't give them a treat. Don't do this, So.
But his heart is so big, I just, and I loved it. I just thought, I just love that caring aspect that he demonstrated in that moment.
That was fantastic. What was the was that before you wrote your first collection of short stories, or was that after the Modern Love? Yeah.
Oh no, Modern Love was May of this year.
This year. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so you were already well in the throes of this book coming out and everything.
I was.
Yeah. Okay. Because I was going to talk a little bit about, because we have a lot of people that come to these and that follow us, and a little bit about the writing. People like to know like the writing process and how you do. So I always like to find out, though, before we get into the writing process, is like, what's the story of how you got your agent and how you sold your first? Because everybody wants to know what that trick is.
Okay. So I had a collection of stories, and I was sending it around to agents, and first I kind of did some research on agents who sold a lot of short story collections, and I sent it to them, and I didn't, some of them read it and maybe liked it, but nobody offered me representation. And then, when I kind of got through that list, there aren't that many agents who really love short stories. There's not really, they can't make as much money as they can with novels and, thrillers and that kind of thing. So then I broadened it a little to agents who represented just literary fiction and general fiction. And I was sending them out, and, this is the collection. And definitely some agents were encouraging, but nobody was offering representation. It was hard. It's the process of looking for an agent is really hard.
It's brutal, right?
It's really brutal, because first of all, you might not hear back for a long time. And they might ask you for the full manuscript, then you might not hear back for a long time. And then, they might have read the whole book and then say, no, thanks, but no thanks. And then, right, it's your baby. And that's really, that can be.
Yeah. Really that's like, when you're telling your baby's ugly, it's like, God, that's horrible.
Right. So then I sent it to Victoria Sanders, who is my agent now. And she has a big process in her office, because they really work as a team. So like everybody on the team reads the book. That's about 4 people. So it takes a little bit of time, although she's wonderful. She's right on top of it. And, and I sent it to them, and then maybe 1 or 2 of them had read it, and they sent me a very encouraging email saying, hey, we're loving it. We're reading it. We'll get back to you next week. And then, the following week they called me and they offered representation. And I was just thrilled.
Yeah.
I couldn't have been, I was just, I was so happy I'd get to move on to the next step, which is submitting to publishers.
Which has its whole other set of like reject. I mean,
Right.
that's all. I mean, you're on this roller coaster ride.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that people need to understand that it's like, you got to be patient. You have to have thick skin.
You have to have such thick skin, but that's true as a writer too. Like, if you start as a writer and you're sending out, so for me, I was sending out short stories, some essays too, and you get so many no's. I mean, and sometimes, or just silence too.
Right.
You have to develop such a thick skin. You really have to not take it personally.
Right.
So often it's just that, well, I actually remember this. I had another essay about a dog called Bad Dog that ran in the New York Times, but 10 years ago. And I sent it to AARP because it was about an aging dog. And as I said to you when we just first met a few minutes ago, I'm not that young either. And so I was kind of talking about growing old with my dog. And so I sent it to AARP magazine, and they got back to me and they said to me, we love the essay, and we just took an essay about an old dog. And I was just like, really?
Yeah.
You just took an essay about an old dog?
Yeah.
And so I was really bummed because it was like a near miss.
Right.
And I would have loved for it to be an AARP magazine. And anyway, probably a month later, the New York Times took it. And
wow.
I can't tell you how happy I was that AARP had not taken it.
Exactly.
But I think that's kind of how it is. You get a lot of rejections, but then you get acceptances, and the right people read them. And
I mean, a lot of times with the authors that we hosted things, and even at the store when we were doing things at the store, it's like everybody thinks that it's just this overnight success, and some people say it's luck, but a lot of it is luck, and a lot of it is timing, and a lot of it is you have to be kind of at the right place and I'm not completely one of those that believes in things happen, but it kind of all does happen for a reason a little bit.
I think all of that is true.
Yeah.
I think I think you have to work really hard on your craft, and years. I think it takes years to really put something together that an agent will want, that a publisher will want. Years of developing your craft and then working on the book. Excuse me. But I also think, in addition to working hard and developing your craft, you have to hit the right time.
Yes.
You do.
And you can't predict that. You can't predict that.
Can't.
It just has to be. And I think a lot of young authors and people who are trying to write, it's like, you have to love you have to love writing. And if you think that you're going to write something and it's going to become a New York Times bestseller, if that's your goal, that's a rough goal to have.
Good luck with that.
It would be great to happen, but.
Right. I mean, it's like wanting to be, that kind of thing is like thinking, you're in, I forgot what it's called, Pop Warner football, and thinking you're going to make the NFL. Like,
exactly.
It's very few people who are going to make the New York Times bestseller list. And I agree with you 100% that most of the time that you spend as a writer, you're going to be writing. So hopefully it's a very joyful, creative thing that you love to do, because otherwise I'm not sure you should really do it.
No, exactly. It's just like, it's got to come from there. And it's just like, it's got to be a drive, it really has to be kind of that drive. So, so that was the agent part of it. So now, is it the same publisher that you had with your short stories as this book?
Yes, it was a 2-book deal.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
They bought both at the same time, although the novel at the time was only about 50 pages.
Okay, so they did have an idea when they were doing that one. So we're going to talk, because I'm fascinated by the title of your short story collection. So I want to know if that was, tell us what the title is, because I'll mess it up.
We Love Anderson Cooper.
Okay, so was that a title that you had that was always there, or was it a collaborative thing? Give me
Sorry.
And then we'll talk about this one too.
Yes, so We Love Anderson Cooper was my title. It's the title of the title story, her story in the book, and so yeah, that was I was I wasn't sure if they were going to keep it. I was about to print up business cards. You know, I was going to a conference. I was about to print up business cards, and I asked my ed, Deb Futter, whether they were going to keep it. And she said yes, and I was thrilled.
I love it. Because that's a tough thing, is that it's like, because the titles can be, you know, that can be a whole other, you know. So how about Other People's Pets? Was that?
So that's also my title, although for a while I was drafting the book, the title was, let's see if I can remember it. Everything You Lose Comes Round, which is really a terrible title. So but it is a Rumi quote. It's beautiful. It's from a longer Rumi quote that I really love, and it did help inspire some of the themes of the book. So I was glad to have that for a while. But then when I really got serious about, you know, what I wanted the title to be, I liked Other People's Pets better.
Oh, I mean, it gives you a kind of a clue of what the book is a little bit, you know, from just looking at it. It's like, okay. And then when you read it, it's a great title. It's a great title.
Thank you.
And then the cover, I know that most authors don't have very much to do with the cover, but I love it. Did you love it?
I do love it. And Celadon, my publisher, they're great, both with the collection and with the novel. They went through, I don't know how many iterations of a cover, like many, until they had two that they really loved. And then they, you know, showed them to me and to Victoria, my agent, and let us select. And with the collection, they were two extremely different covers, You know how they do graphics. So one was a graphic treatment, and one had the bird on it, and that was the one that we ended up going with the bird. And then for this one, they actually had two more similar covers, but I just love this one.
Yeah, it's really a great cover. And I mean, and Celadon's one of those publishers that I think you are so lucky to be with them, because they really curate a great list. I mean, they don't just publish everybody. They pick really great authors. And so I think you're just personally from the book side of it, I think you're with a really great publisher.
I really agree. They are so good to their writers, and they work so hard for every single book that they come out to try to let the public know about it and to have it present in just a really beautiful way. And you know, everything about the process with Celadon has been great. I mean, I can't recommend them highly enough.
Yeah, they're fantastic. So I just want to remind everybody that if you want to put some questions into the chat, we can, if there's something that I'm not asking, because your questions are always a little bit more insightful sometimes than mine can be. But so let's go talk about the writing process a little bit, and we'll talk about, let's talk about first, are you writing during this time, or is this lockdown time, or is your brain like everybody's that's just a little off a little bit?
Yeah, I did start a new novel, but it's been hard to work on it, both because of the pandemic, but also because of marketing. I mean, because of marketing the book and promoting the book. So, because I'm the kind of person, when I'm writing, like when I wrote Other People's Pets, I wrote 6 days a week, and I wrote all morning, and I wrote an hour or two in the afternoon, except on Saturday I just write in the morning, and Sunday I took off. But I'm a really regimented person, so it's a little hard to do that with promotion. And also I just think, you know, I've been working on things for promotion, whether it's, you know, interviews or essays that will get out to the public quicker than this new novel, of course, will. And so, but I know a lot of writers too. I don't know how successful I would be anyway, even if I weren't doing that, because this is it's just a very worrisome time, and being worried isn't the ideal conditions to write.
Right. And that's what we talked about a little bit in the green room too. It's like, and sometimes people think, oh, why are you doing these events? We're in the middle of it. Oh, and it's like, I just feel like we're bringing people a respite in their day, and you can come and listen to, you know, hopefully a wonderful conversation. And like you talked about earlier, that's what your book is too. It's just this, it takes you away. It gives you a little bit of levity. It's got some, you know, it's got heart, and it's got, like I said, it's heart and quirk. It's kind of got those two elements to it, because we have to have a little diversion in our day.
And I certainly get that from reading right now, you know, too.
Okay, that's a good question. Who are you reading?
So I just finished The Vanishing Half, Britt Bennett, which was just phenomenal, just incredible, incredible book. I loved it so much. I immediately read The Mothers, which I loved.
Yep.
And so I thought that was great. I read Separation Anxiety by Laura Zigman,
Okay.
and which is a hilarious book. And the cover of the book, if you see the cover, it's a woman wearing her dog in a baby Bjorn. So of course, as soon as I saw that, I knew it was going to be a funny book. And I also knew I was going to be my kind of funny book. And it was really super, super funny. Something else that I read was actually Shonda Rhimes' The Year of Yes.
Okay.
Which I loved. And it's this memoir about her saying yes to everything that comes her way for a year. And it's really about extroverting for someone who describes self-described introvert. And I am an introvert, and I need to do, a lot of activities and events for around the promotion of the book. And so I thought, let me read this. And there were so many wonderful insights in it, and so beautifully written and also funny. And it was great book.
Yeah, and it's a couple years old too, but it's one of those perennial books, I think, too, that it's just like you can always pull something out of it that can help you and give you kind of a little bit of insight on that. So anyways, yeah, so it's, to release a book during this time, you had a little bit, I think is it a little bit different releasing a collection of short stories versus a novel? I mean, but it's kind of hard to compare because releasing a novel during a pandemic's got to be really weird too.
Yeah, it's just hard to compare. I mean, there's a little bit of a challenge with releasing a short story collection because I think most people look for full-length books. I think, definitely there are people like myself and other people who love short stories, but I think more people are looking for novels.
Yeah.
And so, and yet with the novel, this is also a strange launch because it is just a strange time for people.
Right.
A strange time in the country for all kinds of reasons.
Right.
And I have to say, I'm doing all these virtual events because obviously we're not doing any in-store events. I'm doing all these, and they've been so lovely. I just, I feel like I've gotten to talk to you and all kinds of book people, and
right.
Even though it's not in a store, people have reached out in different kinds of ways, and also I'm able to reach more people.
You are, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is really great because you're right. It's like reaching more people is so great. And I think that, obviously we hope that people buy the book from Warwick's, but it goes back to that thing with people not going into stores so much. Even though we're open, you can come and browse, but a lot of stores aren't open. So there's not that discovery thing. So doing these virtual events is a great way too, but it's like, and we know that, people are in different financial situations, but if you can buy the book, it just helps it helps the whole process. It helps us, it helps you as the author. It's just the chain that we want to keep going if we possibly can. So I don't see many chats going on in the comments and in the room. So we're going to go into something that I like to say is like, well, let's get to know you a little bit. So, so tell us what your first concert was.
It was, I'm about to say it was a Led Zeppelin concert.
Love that. Yeah. And you grew up in New York, so was it?
I did. It was on Long Island.
Okay. Oh,
now, when I just said that, you can hear I came from New York.
That had to have been a great concert to see.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that would be a good one. Now, I'm assuming, are you a vegetarian?
I'm a vegan.
You're a vegan. So what's your favorite vegan dish?
So my husband's the cook in the family, who's just lucky. And he makes an incredible Chipotle chili, of course, meatless, but it has every vegetable under the sun, every kind of bean you can imagine. It has this smoky flavor from the Chipotles and just great.
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we do have a question in here, so I'm going to ask that. I'll get to the other ones on how to get to know you later before we close out.
I'm thinking I misspoke. I'm sorry. I'm just going to correct myself. I'm thinking I misspoke about Led Zeppelin. But because I'm too old to really remember. Yeah, I'm thinking I misspoke about that, but I'm not sure what the first one was.
Okay. Well, maybe you remember, but whatever Led Zeppelin was in there, and so you did go. It may not have been your first go. You can write us later and tell us. So Hillary in the chat room has asked, as a writer who previously focused on the short story, how did you recalibrate your intention/approach in starting a novel?
Well, so hi Hillary. Hillary's my friend.
Oh,
So,
hi, Hillary.
so with short stories, as I said, I mean, I just tell the first draft, second draft, third, I just tell myself the story. I keep telling myself the story over and over again as I draft. I never do an outline, and I just get clear and clear on what the intention of the piece is, and hone it and discover new things about it, and then hone it some more, until I have the finished piece. So I tried to do that with a novel, but there was no way to do that way. So I did create a first draft just telling myself the story. It was a huge mess. There were characters who were important in the first half who just walked off the stage, never to be seen again. There were, you know, I wanted characters to have a certain kind of character development, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't, I certainly didn't have all the pieces in there for it to be, as we call, sometimes as writers call, earned, you know, that you would really believe that the character had made that kind of change. You know, there were all kinds of things. There were plot holes, all kinds of things wrong with it. So a teacher of mine recommended that even if I didn't want to write the book from an outline, once I had a full draft, then create an outline and try to solve some of the problems in the outline. And I did that, and that was really helpful. And then I went and did a second draft. But again, I'm listening to my characters as I write. Even though I had one eye on that outline, if my character wants to do something different from the outline or reveals something about herself that's different than she was in the prior draft that makes her do different things, I'm just going to follow her wherever she wants to go. So then I do a second draft, and I have to go back and revise the outline. And so it was a back and forth process of revising the draft and then revising the outline, in order to have it come together. I have to say, we were talking about this a little bit too. I do find, they're both hard. Short stories are hard and novels are hard, but writing a novel was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I've been a lawyer, so that says something. You know, and I went to law school, so writing a novel was definitely harder than those things.
You did a really good job.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. But I have to say, it was just a tremendous challenge. And because it was such a big challenge, it was also one of the most rewarding things I've ever done.
So do you think you'll go back and write a short story collection again, or are you going to write a novel again?
I don't know if I'll do a collection, but I'll definitely, you know, as I have ideas for stories. When I have an idea for a story, I email it to myself.
Right.
And I have like story idea as the subject head. And then when I'm ready to sit down, if I need inspiration, I'll search on, you know, a story idea, and I'll see all my ideas, and I'll see which one resonates, you know, at that time. So I've definitely been making notes on some stories that I think I might like to write. I definitely also want to write another novel, and as I said, I dip my toe into it, and I have an idea for one. So I see myself working in both genres.
Well, and what you talked about people. There are people that I think are gravitating towards the short story collections, especially in this time, because you can consume it in a short period of time, kind of like poetry. People are reading a lot of poetry right now too. So it's just like, I think the short story definitely has found a little bit of a niche in its place, especially during this shutdown time.
Yes.
How long did it take you to write Other People's Pets?
It took about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was working in your really regimented way?
I was working 6. I had to do it when I sold the 2-book deal. So there, as I said, I had just begun the novel, and it was due, you know, I'd been working on it maybe for about a year, but still it was very early, or not even that long. And I had 2 years to finish it. Now, the publisher said to me, if you need more, you can take more, but I knew they wanted me to finish it in 2 years. Right. So I had to work, you know, every day to get it done. I actually love working that way. And I loved working for a deadline. Yeah. It made it, having that kind of goal made it easier to just kind of buckle down.
Well, and I think that that's the thing that sometimes people think that, you know, being a writer is just, it's this freelancing thing. It's a job. It's a job like any other job. And you have to treat it like that.
Yeah.
You know, and this whole thing about promoting it, it's like, it's part of the deal. It's part of being an author these days. It's not like you just write it and it's like, oh, go away. Okay, so in the chat, Christine, my glasses, the computer's a little further away from me today. So she has a question on, do you have pets now? And if so, tell us about them.
Okay, so yes, I do. I have a dog named Rosie. And Rosie was homeless for the first year of her life. She comes from South Dakota. And so when we adopted her, she did not know, she was not house trained. She was terribly, terribly afraid of other dogs and people. I don't know if she had had bad experiences living on the street. And so we worked with this wonderful trainer, and now she is the neighborhood flirt. I mean, we walk around, you know, and she sees a friend, like a dog friend, and her back end wiggles and she squeals, and she just has to go say hello. And so
she's the mayor of Boulder.
Yes, she is the mayor of Boulder. That's perfect. And so, and then we have a cat named Ari, and Ari's also a rescue from the shelter. And Ari was put in the shelters. She was dropped in the shelter's night box. They have a night box, just like libraries do. And I guess they have that so that if somebody finds an animal, I think there's two reasons. I think it's so that if someone finds an animal at night and there's nobody at the shelter, you can put him there and he'll go in and he'll be safe. But I also think they do that because some people are embarrassed to surrender. And it's still better to surrender than to just abandon, you know, because the shelter will take care of the animal.
So and that was one of the things in your book that you did talk about. I did not know I did not know that. And it broke my heart, but it made sense.
Yeah. So, and I want to, the dogs in the book, Black and Blue, are actually, they're a little bit modeled after two dogs that I had, you know, about 10 years ago, Tilly and Chance. And I don't know if the people can see, but Tilly is a black lab, and Chance is the Aussie mix. Now, of course, they're heavily fictionalized, and but I used them as models, and then I felt like I was able to keep them close to me while I was writing the book, and also it was a little bit of a tribute to them to have them in the book. So that's, you know, again, very fictionalized, but still definitely, because the dogs in the book, one's a lab, one's a black lab, and one's an Aussie mix, and so yeah.
Oh yeah, and they're just, and all of the pets that Lala comes across too. I mean, it's such a great, if you're a pet lover, you're gonna love this book. And even if you're just like, you don't have to be a pet lover to love this book though. That's the thing that I love about it. It's not so like dogs, it's a people book, it's a pet book, it's got everything. It really has it all. Okay, so then my next couple of questions. So we got your favorite dish. What's your favorite cocktail?
You know, I'm not a big drinker.
Okay.
But I did just have a hard apple cider that I enjoyed the other day. But I don't drink a lot of mixed drinks. I'll have a beer, or I'll have a glass of wine, or hard cider in the summer.
You go. Love it. Are you a dessert eater? And if so, what's your favorite dessert?
I love dessert. And not only do I love dessert, but I have a go-to dessert food for when things don't go my way and when things go my way. They're the same food. I get this vegan chocolate cake, and like when I would get rejections from agents, one Friday, I got 3 rejections from different agents that had all been reading the whole book. I mean, it broke my heart. And this was for the collection. And my husband knew that the only way to get me up off the floor weeping was to go buy this vegan chocolate cake. And so but then when we sold the books, I ate vegan chocolate cake, because that's what I do.
I love it. Is it a particular bakery in Boulder that you go to for that?
It's Whole Foods.
There you go. Love it. Love it. Love it. Where's the first place you're going to travel to when travel bans?
I don't know, but I want to, even though I'm a homebody, about once a year or you know, I like to go on a big trip, you know. So I don't know. We've been thinking about all the places we've been reliving. You know, a couple of years ago, we went to Ireland. We've been reliving that trip. We went to Italy a few years ago. We've been reliving that trip. And there are some hot springs in New Mexico that we adore, that are driving distance from us. That are just, these natural hot springs are so nice. And I'm sure, since that'll be an easy one, once we can travel again, we'll just, you know, we'll drive down there and try to just lose ourselves in the luscious hot springs.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that's one thing in the book too that I didn't realize, and that New Mexico isn't that far from Colorado. I mean, I know it's right there, but it just, for whatever reason, it's like, oh, how are they getting there? And it's like, oh, it's really not that far. It's really not that far. So we're going to wrap this up a little bit. I've got a couple more questions. It's just little easy ones. What's the best way for everybody to follow you? Do you do social media? Do you like it? How, if people want to know more about what's going on in your world?
So rlmaizes.com is my website, and it has connections to everything else. I do Twitter, and that would be at RL_Maizes. And I do Instagram, and that's at R_L_Maizes. And why I have that ridiculous handle, I have no idea.
So the easiest way is just go to your website and click through.
Correct. Exactly.
That's the easiest way.
rlmaizes.com.
Perfect. So before we close out, what's the last thing you want to tell everybody that it would be the last thing you want people to take away from reading your book?
So, what I hope people take away from the book is that even if they didn't have the kind of childhood they might have wished for, or the kind of parents they might have hoped for, they can still thrive as adults.
Definitely. It's a great book. RL, it was great having you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
I'm going to take us off of Facebook, and I'm going to stop our recording.